What is up guys, Wraec is here with a new video, and today we're going to take a look at Nazrik. Nazrik is the upcoming S-tier Mauler hero that is going to be rated up for the start of Season Phase 2. I had the opportunity to test him on the Pioneer server, and of course I want to let you guys know whether or not this guy is somebody that you might want to summon in his rate up, or if you want to maybe wait a little bit and summon him later on. Keep in mind, during the time on Pioneer, all units can still be changed and might be released in a little bit of a different version on the global server. That being said, this guy is fairly balanced, I think, so I would be surprised if they did any major changes to him before the release, so can be fairly certain that this is like the same. So I think the best way to show you guys what this guy can do is to probably show him in PvP. So here's some gameplay, let's go. And for this fight, he throws his signature spear. You can see how much damage that really does if you keep an eye out. We're going to show it one more time. But the HP bars of the units this guy hits are just vanishing. It is absolutely insane. So in terms of like normal attack damage, as long as he's able to crit, especially in combination with a unit like Thador that also boosts his crit, his damage output, even without like being an ult, is absolutely enormous. On top of that, when he does an ult, you have an absolutely huge nuke. You can see 14.6 mil over here. So fairly good damage. We'll watch it one more time. Keep an eye out on that Cider. Bam! It's like a third of the HP just vanishing from a normal attack. He is crit dependent, meaning if he doesn't crit, well, he's also dealing a lot less damage, especially in this season, because he has a charm that allows him to deal splash damage to surrounding units whenever he does a critical hit, which complements him fairly well, because what this guy has, he has forced critical hits on his ultimate skill. So the giant spear that is coming down, that will deal a forced critical hit. And in that sense, he is really a damage-focused unit. We can confidently say that he's damage-focused. Let's go over his abilities a little bit. Starting off, we have this ability. 4 seconds into a battle, Nazrik marks the enemy who has taken the most damage as his prime, prioritizes them as the target for all his skills. We can very quickly check this out in the trial stage. We'll do double speed, and at one point he just puts this snake mark over the head of an enemy. If that enemy dies, the next enemy will take it. It is then sent to another one. This doesn't seem to follow the same logic though. We saw this a few times already. Doesn't really matter which one of the units took the most damage. It sometimes just seems to randomly switch. So not entirely sure about that. You saw it right there. New unit spawned in and instantly got the mark, despite, well, probably not having received any damage at all yet. Isn't quite too bad. I'm not a big fan of this way that they do this. This enemy, however, is considered the prey for his skills. That is the important part. You have to consider that it is a keyword that is used later on as well. So the ult itself, global range, pretty good. Starts with 200 initial energy, not that great. Could be a little bit more in my opinion. And when casting a spear, he will hurl out his spear, do a big hit, which is a guaranteed critical hit, 600% damage. And this will also trigger all Rend stacks on the enemy. What Rend is, we'll go over that in a second. Pretty good ult. Could receive some more initial energy, and then one part that I don't really like, it isn't really part of the ult initially, but it is the passive skill. I don't like this who has taken the most damage. The idea behind this, I would assume, is that we have some tanky unit we want to take out. Could be a boss, that would be okay. But imagine you have a PvP fight, and you face a team such as the one we just saw, and the unit that you hit all the time is maybe a Cider, maybe something like this, and it has like 20% life remaining, gets target as the prey, and then you do your giant spear throw. Is that really what you want though? Is the unit that you hit the most, or that has taken the most damage, necessarily the one that you really want to throw your spear on? Or wouldn't it be far better if you had a targeting, let's say for example like a Thalia? Thalia, who has the targeting of the ult, and a very similar ult at that, by the way, strikes the enemies with the highest cumulative damage dealt. And I think this would just be better, because I see it so often that he throws this spear and hits a Cider with 10% HP remaining. That would have been taken out by a normal attack from whatever unit you have on the board a second later, but then you throw the spear on her and it doesn't even show the big number. It doesn't even show like, oh, it's 100,000 damage or whatever. It doesn't even show that. The unit just vanishes. Okay, great. And you basically feel like you wasted that ult. And that makes it a lot less cool. Would be so insane if we would just go ahead, throw his spear, hit like a Perseus, one-shot it. Because I think it's possible. I think it's possible that this spear one-shots a Perseus. But you don't really get to see it. You don't really get to see it. Ult animation, by the way, where we're at it. Yeah, perfectly fine. Nothing too fancy. I would say 4 out of 10 ult animation. Not too bad. Can't keep up with Mihira, that much is certain. But yeah, so that targeting, taking the most damage, leads to him just like often targeting enemies that are really not that great. It can go into kind of a flow, where he takes out the unit rather fast, focus on the Cider like we saw in this situation. The Cider was decent that he took her out fairly fast, because she can be a problem if she gets to ult too often, so that was kind of nice. But it can of course be something like an Igor, which isn't too great then, or something else. So there are more situations where I don't like this kind of targeting than ones where I do like it. So that is a complaint, though I would still say it's alright. It's overall still alright. Then we have a very, very key ability to him, and this is whenever he lands a critical hit on an enemy with a spear throw from his normal attacks or skills, he deals extra damage. Equal to the 6.5% of the enemy's initial max HP. So once again, we are emphasizing that this unit is mostly about crit. We want to do critical hits to enemies. And that is really the part that will give you the big damage. You will notice very, very quickly during a fight the hits that are not critical hits and the ones that are. Because the ones that are will deal significantly more damage. It's like basically damage that is not noticeable to a third of the enemy max HP. That is the difference we are talking about here. And for that, we kind of have to understand what crit really is and how crit works. And I want to put this in here as like a little bit of like an info piece that you can ignore. It will go for like 20 seconds or something. A little bit of crit. If you know about crit, skip the next 20 seconds and you will talk about something interesting. So crit is in the rivalry stats. It doesn't have stats. I don't know why. It doesn't have stats. It's a little bit weird. So the most important skills that we have are, first of all, crit, the standard stats, which is at the very high stats, 515% over here. And then we have crit damage boost. Those are the offensive crit stats. The crit percent, the likelihood of you scoring critical hit, which is 515% at this point, which is confusing. We'll get less confusing in a second. And the crit damage boost, which decides how much damage you do. And this is always countered by opposing defensive stats. In this case, crit resist, which is 485% on a unit, and the concrete value depends mostly on the class of the unit. So while in this case for the marksman it is 485%, for most tanks, for example, it will be significantly higher. We can take a look here at Dunlinger, for example, who is a tank. If we take a look at his crit resist, we can see that it's 503.1%. This is a very common one for tanks. Some heroes that have a higher one would be, for example, Temesia. Temesia, wait, I'm wrong, has higher crit resist, which we can check out over here, is 505%. So up to 505% crit resist, we can say. And if we check out Nazrik, we had a crit of 515%, and enemies that we can assume have somewhere between 485 to 505% crit resist. What does that mean? So if, let's say, we attack this Temesia, which has 505% crit resist, that crit resist gets deducted from our crit. So our crit is 515 minus the 505 crit resist, gives us a 10% chance to actually deal a critical hit on the enemy. And that isn't great. That isn't great. So this 10% chance to really inflict a critical hit on the enemy is not really great. So what we really ideally want is some form of crit boost, which we get. We actually get this in his hero focus. Increases the crit by 24%, 24 during the battle. So this 24 becomes really important in the situation. You can understand how formerly we had the 10% chance to crit. With that, it's a 34% chance. Absolutely insane. After inflicting 15 Rend stacks, we get an extra 12 crit, bringing us to 46%. And then we have to talk about sources of crit. There aren't too many. I want to point out two to you guys. The first one is Theda. Theda is a very interesting one where he will designate the hero placed behind him as his lieutenant, giving them 15 crit plus 1.5 for every single skill power that he has. So we can get like 15 crit from this guy. And then the other one that you can have, and that is less reliable, is that Lone Gaze will apply a spirit mark to an enemy, and when the battle starts, spirit marked ally dashes to symmetrical tile, which isn't great. You really won't want to do this. But when the spirit marked ally deals damage to the enemy pursued by lone gaze, they have additional 30 crit rate, 30 crit damage boost life drain, which is cool. This is very cool. You will probably not be able to keep your Nazrik alive through this, but if you can make this work, could be very, very fancy. I'm looking forward to seeing some guys invent teams around that. So that was the crit chance perspective. We are fairly well equipped. I still like to run them with Theta for that extra crit. And then we have the crit damage area. Crit damage is always... crit damage is basically what decides how much damage your critical hit will do. And this is always 120% of the normal damage to 300%. So you can reduce the critical damage of a hero only so much, because the base default is 150%. 150% is the usual critical hit. Without further crit damage boost modifier, a normal a critical hit will do 150% of the damage of a normal hit. So then you have the crit damage def and the crit damage boost. Those are the two stats that work in a similar way as crit and crit resist. If we now take that into account, we get as a result, if we have a negative crit damage, so if the enemy has more crit damage def, then we have crit damage boost, then we can go down to 120% damage. From our critical hit. Or if we have more crit damage boost, then the enemy has crit damage def, or the enemy has no crit damage def, as in this scenario many heroes don't have crit damage def, then we can go up to 300%. For Nazrik, that is furthermore important, because he has another ability. Each time Nazrik lands a critical hit on an enemy, the crit damage boost of that hit increases by 0.1% for every 1% of Nazrik's crit rate, so we get more crit damage for having more crit rate. Essentially. So that is why you want to basically put crit rate on this guy, which is sadly a little bit difficult, because right now, we don't really have many sources. I kind of already told you most that those two sucks a little bit. Charm wise, not really anything going on. We talked about it in the first video I made about him. We have a little bit we have crit here, so that is really good. That we have the Ruthless Charm. Butcher is on here. So we definitely can go into crits right there. Could have sworn that the Butcher wasn't in here before. Very confusing. Doesn't matter. But we have Butcher right now in here. 40% crit damage boost, so really, really nice for him. And you want to stack that. You really do want to stack that. Plus we get crit damage boost here from the charm itself. And the critical splash damage, which is really, really good. So definitely want to take a look into that. And that is really important for him. And that will allow you to deal a ton of damage. So now that we crit, what happens? Well, first of all, we have the extra damage. And then we have a limit to the extra damage, which is 180% attack, which sucks a little bit. And then we have each hit reduces the enemy's max HP by the same amount up to 40%. If we check that out in combat again, you will notice that the enemies here, for example, on the Igor, that they get the gray HP bars, same with Natsu or Shemira, where the HP bars, even when they get healed, won't be filled again. Is something that is more important actually in PvE than it is in PvP. For PvP, and that is kind of very nicely flowing into his next ability, the problem is that you want to block the enemies from healing back up to full HP with that again. Which would be cool if we had healers. But we don't. We actually don't. Like, we are really struggling at the moment in PvP to have any decent-ish healers. We have some heroes that heal a little bit. We have Ludovic, which is probably the only decent healer right now that comes to my mind. Nero's never used as a healer, even though he heals. Faye was even used in some situation. But what makes Ludovic great is you can plug him into a team and it will basically work. He will always avoid the unit or healing the units that you want to have healed the most. That is normal. But what he will do is he will be unaffected at the start of the battle, so you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about my hero with Ludovic, is not important. He will provide very decent heal. He will be substantially tanky. Other stuff, Smokey never heals, always interrupted. He went way too slow. Rowan only really used with Balron because, well, that guy doesn't even heal with his ult. What's that? Rainier is not really a healer because his abilities don't really heal and everybody blocks him all the time. Damien is no longer used in PvP. Lawson is not really a healer. Hugin provides shields, which are ignored by half of the PvP meta because they deal true damage. Mikola is a joke in this, and so you really don't have a healer. So that is the problem at the moment. If we had healers, great. Blocking off HP bars, superb. But we have a very fast burst meta with no healers. And that is also the problem of this next ability, which is in theory cool, but where he hurls a spear at an enemy with the highest total healing done, dealing 300% damage, stunning them for 3 seconds, reducing their healing, which is their ability to provide heal and shields to other units, by 90, so 90% for 15 seconds. In theory, pretty great ability. Highest total healing done. Will usually hit like the units that primarily focus on healing, though in theory it could heal. It could hit other units that just heal themselves for a lot. So it is not like just because the enemy is not running Ludovic, he won't do this ability, but he can still do this ability even if there is no other real healer on the board. So this interesting part is applies to self heals. So even on a unit like Balron, for example, that's also a unit that heals himself for quite a lot. This would also reduce heals from lifesteal, for example. So in that sense, it's still fairly interesting, but it struggles in 2 aspects. So what are the 2 healers that are still used in PvP? As real healers for the purpose of healing. It's really Ludovic. Okay, against Ludovic it works. The spear will block their healing and Ludovic will suck afterwards, so that's pretty good. Against Rowan, it doesn't even work. So the fancy part is, how does Rowan work? When is Rowan used? Rowan is used in Balron teams. He's used because he has this ability that allows him to heal an enemy at the start of battle. Allies within 2 tiles with HP ratio below 50% automatically use a portion to recover 40% of their max HP. So that is used together with Balron. You use Balron, Balron gives himself the 300% max HP, his HP ratio drops below 50%, he instantly gets a portion from Rowan, healing himself by an obscene amount in just like 1 second. So what happens then? Well, afterwards he doesn't really heal. He does have this potion, but you don't rely on those. He's just on the board then. He's a tool used for this one-time thing. So in that situation, suddenly you basically use him for gaining some energy, which isn't blocked. This isn't blocked by healing. This isn't governed by the healing stat. So when Nazrik throws his spear at him, yes, he will get stunned, but the healing part really doesn't matter at all. So in 50% of the healers that are used, this isn't really even the thing. So right now, not a great ability, but might be in the future. If we get some potent healers, this might become important. So that is what I want to point out. This might become important. Self-grid, we have already talked about this. We have already talked about this Mythic Plus ability. This was misread by a few people. I saw this. Nazrik reduces his Prey's crit resist. What is his Prey? Well, his Prey is the hero that he targets with his mark. So after 4 seconds. Crit resist, we talked about it. I don't have to cover it again. Very, very good to reduce. It's actually better than buffing a unit's crit is to reduce the enemy's crit resist in general because, well, every single unit hitting this enemy unit will profit from that. And when allied units land a critical hit on a spray, they inflict 1 stack of Rend. And as we saw before, Rend, when an enemy affected by Rend casts their ultimate, they take 35% damage, which isn't really a lot, but maybe worth using skill power on, for each Rend stack they currently have. By the way, not insane damage on ult in my opinion. It could be, in theory. I mean, in theory, it could be 30 stacks of Rend, each 35% damage, so 1050% damage. Could be very, very interesting, but I've never really seen an enemy that tries to ult and just dies. Not really seen that. Most of the time, I think it just adds to Rend Rupture to his ult. But still, this... Wait, where? There. This is nicely adding to his damage overall. And the enemy units that have this prey marker on them, they really die faster. They die faster. Vitality reduction we have in here, and damage taken increase, and also prey crit resist reduced by 28. 28 is massive. That is absolutely massive. We've given the example of how it works. This is massive. This is absolutely massive. So, very, very good at increasing the crit. So now there was the discussion whether or not this guy is good for Dream Realm. And I made some tests with it. We can't really properly test it here. I think there needs to be like more players, more competition around it for us to really test it. But what I went ahead with is I just like took this team, and this is essentially the standard team right now. And this team is the Chimera comp, not super fancy, but a very, very good comp. I tried that. We see 119 billion over here, 57 billion there from the Wolf. And what I did first was I just swapped out Chimera and tried to slot in Nazrik. And we can see an interesting phenomenon happening. The formation is the same, so we have him in at the same position as Chimera. But it absolutely made the Pharamore skyrocket. Pharamore deals true damage, and it doesn't really do well with in terms of like doing crit. But of course, when we have Nazrik on the board, the enemy gets marked as prey. We see the symbol over here just next to the name, and in that sense it does take a lot more critical hits, allowing Pharamore to deal a whole lot more damage. So in that situation suddenly Pharamore became our damage dealer more so than Nazrik, and it's quite interesting to see how this interaction really with the crit worked out. So I thought, okay, well that is indeed kind of interesting. Because, well, if he works so much better as like a support unit, let's maybe try that. And I won't show you the full fight here because we have four or five fights and those will all be the same. So it's not really worth it in that sense. But we saw that the damage here, in total it was a decrease of the damage, 185 to 168 billion. But still kind of interesting because we got this massive increase on Pharamore. So then I tried the same situation, but we went and used the formation, used him instead of Pharamore as support for our Chimera, which resulted in 134 billion and 34 billion here from Nazrik. We can compare 134B and 34B, and we compare to the initial amount. So we see that indeed we have buffed the damage of Chimera. So our Chimera damage is higher in this scenario, but we have lost damage compared to Pharamore. So basically everything that we gave to Chimera, we lost because Nazrik wasn't able to do the same damage as Pharamore. Which is interesting. I think Nazrik comparably would work better if we had more than one other damage dealer. So if we had like another one beyond that. If we have teams like that, if for example there is a meta where we have 2, 3, maybe 3 damage dealers, and you put Nazrik together with that, of course this crit resist debuff will be much more impactful. And that could be something that is very, very interesting overall. So I tried different things. I tried different teams. Quite interesting overall was this last one, where I did 127 billion. So the problem on this one was I used Thador to increase his crit, and Thador really doesn't do a whole lot of damage. We had 127B, which is in theory pretty crazy, because as I can point back, he outdamaged Chimera in this comparison. So it's about 119B. The thing is though, we can combine Chimera with our Pharamore, and this is in total more damage than Thador with Nazrik. But so we have damage potential, and that is what I wanted to show you. I can't really tell you if he's the best unit in Dream Realm. I think most that people have tried in most situations, Chimera was better. But those are the results. It's fairly interesting. So what do I say in total? It's a long video after all already again. He is pretty good. Is he S tier PvP? No, I don't think so. In most situations on Pioneer, it's pretty tough to test because what you run into is like a lot of full Celestial Hypergen teams. We can just Alpha, nice. Shout out Alpha, by the way, makes great YouTube videos when we have the opportunity. Shorty, shout out Fight Club. I don't get out of the shout outs here. Fight Club Discord, I already showed them a few times. Definitely great. But I will show you this, because Shorty has a team that kind of fits this narrative. We have like full Celestial Hypergen teams, and it's a bit crazy. And you try to make your team work, and it ends up looking like this. Okay, in this situation, a Perseus basically ran through our team. But yeah, I think it's kind of tough for such a unit to keep up with 6-star Paragon 4 Celestial Hypergen units. So I think if we talk about S tier, in like a fictional leaderboard and a fictional tier list, I think we will see units like Cider on top. We will see units like Athalia on top. I don't think you will see Nazrik necessarily at like an S tier. I would say maybe like an A tier. Lower end A tier. That is what I would say. Lower end A tier for PvP because he has the damage. He has some great abilities that make enemies very, very squishy. But in the end, lacks like the complete utility that the common Celestial Hypergen units have at the moment, or that overpowered units like Perseus or Chimera have for PvP. But still, he's pretty great. And one thing that is particularly good about him, and that will be interesting, is to actually not summon him through his rate up. Because the good thing is, take a look at that. There are really, really many bad S-tier maulers. Many heroes that you do not even want. And that's really good. Because that means we can take Nazrik, and in all likelihood, you already have your Brutus copy. You probably have your Smokey. Maybe you have your Mikola as well. And you have enough room right now to plug him directly into your wishlist. That will be true for so many players. Will be true for me. Will be true for like a lot of players that have rather established accounts, I think. Yet you can directly plug him into your wishlist without much thinking about it. Maybe you even have a slot in your epic recruitment. I don't know. Might be possible. I think that overall, and you're not really needing him directly for Dream Realm, probably needing him for Ravaged Realm, by the way. I'm pretty sure he will be great for Ravaged Realm. And if you want to plan that much in advance. But you have probably enough room in your wishlist to put him there, so I wouldn't worry too much about getting him right now. Tell me what you think about this guy. If you want to still prepare though, by the way, then I would say check out LD Shop. They have the cheapest Dragon Crystals for AFK Journey, and if you want to prepare for rate up for such a wonderful new unit such as Nazrik or maybe for Mehira, then those Dragon Crystals definitely won't disappoint. Top service, and you get a 15% and a 5% discount coupon whenever you go through the link down in the description. Create an account, and I would definitely recommend, if you want to keep supporting my channel, to just click this link whenever you want to purchase something, maybe save it as a bookmark or something like that. That would be absolutely appreciated by me, because otherwise, yeah, you don't support me with that, sadly. that is a sad thing about LD Shop. But the service is great, the Dragon Crystal price is great, and so I definitely am quite happy with it and use it myself quite often, I have to say it. Other than that, of course, let me know what you think about Nazrik down in the comments below, and whether or not you are going to summon him. That is something I would really care for. Are you preparing for maybe the collab that is coming up? They already announced that. Or would you summon something like Nazrik right now? Are you preparing for another hero? Let me know all of that down in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button, and other than that, I just wish you a great day. I'll see us in the next one.